Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we discuss if the Oklahoma Sooners are cracking under the pressure to compete in the SEC. What are we talking about? Well, this past weekend, the Oklahoma Sooners lost their SEC debut versus the Tennessee Volunteers. This is a game where Tennessee basically was in control of the game the entire time. Oklahoma did have a few scores late to make it a 10-point loss, to make the game seem like it was a little bit closer if you just look at the box score. But if you watch the whole game, Tennessee was in control for basically the entire game. Oklahoma had a lot of struggles on the offensive side of the ball. And this led to head coach Brent Venables going on his coach's show Monday night and announcing that true freshman Michael Hawkins Jr. was going to be starting over Jackson Arnold. This is a very, very shocking decision if you're looking at this here, because even though, yes, Jackson Arnold hasn't necessarily played well the first few weeks of the season, it is only 4 games into him being the full-time starter. I know he started the bowl game last year, but 4 games in, Brent Venables decided to make this move. This is also comes at a point, too, where Oklahoma Sooners fans can tell you this, but I'm going to say this for people that might not know this, that haven't been following that program as closely. Oklahoma has been dealing with a bounty of injuries. They have been hurt on the offensive line. They have had not much continuity there. A lot of their skill position pieces have been hurt too. So you're kind of looking at the decision to bench Jackson Arnold, and you're looking at that like, hey, like, is this his fault that he is not producing at the level that we thought he would? Because this was a guy that was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school, and this is a guy too that at least the optics of it was, hey, it's okay that Dylan Gabriel is going to Oregon. We have Jackson Arnold to come in behind him, so we don't really have to worry about losing Dylan Gabriel. And now 4 games in, you're making the decision to bench him. This just seems like a huge overreaction to moving on from Jackson Arnold just 4 games into this season. And this is something I was talking about before the season, was like, hey, if you're Oklahoma, like, you don't want to fall into this trap that all these other SEC teams do, because I was just looking at Oklahoma's schedule. I'm like, hey, you guys are going to have a very tough road going on here. With that being said, though, why would Brent Venables go on and make the decision to bench Jackson Arnold? I have 2 possible options, guys, of why he decided to do that. The first one is he's dumb. That's option 1. Because if this is like some sort of crazy overreaction, and you're pulling Jackson Arnold out and you're throwing in Michael Hawkins, and you're going to be basically, is this going to be a thing where it's like, well, Michael Hawkins struggles out, Jackson Arnold's back in, and then you're basically having this situation where you have 2 young quarterbacks, and you might be messing with their, their psyche and their confidence if you're constantly doing this game of like pulling one and putting in another, and then pulling that guy and then putting in another. And is that really, it just doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do if you're Brent Venables here with 2 young quarterbacks that do have a lot of potential. With that being said, though, I think it's more likely that Brent Venables is not dumb, and it's option 2, and that is that Jackson Arnold is either very raw or just not that good, and Michael Hawkins is better. If you look, and again, I know I said the thing about Oklahoma's had trouble with health on the offensive line and skill positions. But if you just look at Jackson Arnold and his tenure at Oklahoma so far, his completion percentage is kind of meh. It's around 60%. And then his first 4 games being the starter at Oklahoma this year, I know he's rushed the ball too, and he was really good in the Tulane game running the ball, but he has not thrown for 180 yards in a game, and you're playing Houston and Tulane. Like, you should be throwing the ball. Again, I understand there's injuries, but you should be throwing the ball better than what you're doing right now. And I was listening to Oklahoma people, an Oklahoma podcast, and they're kind of doing some analysis on his play, and basically whenever the Oklahoma offense runs some sort of an RPO, Jackson Arnold is just completely lost, and he doesn't know what sort of read to make. And every time there's an RPO, it's just an absolute disaster. If you go back even to the bowl game last year, he threw for a lot of yards, but he had 3 interceptions in that game. Jackson Arnold just is either an incredibly raw quarterback prospect with a lot of talent that still needs to be developed and isn't ready to start, or he might not be that good. And this Michael Hawkins guy, again, if you listen to the people that are, covering Oklahoma and have, insider knowledge on the Oklahoma program, Michael Hawkins has been dazzling in camp and in practices, but you aren't going to, and there's just a chance that throughout all of the offseason and at least for these first few weeks of the season in practice, that Michael Hawkins might have just been outplaying Jackson Arnold. But you had Jackson Arnold obviously had like the opportunity to, with his high, recruiting ceiling being a 5-star, and the fact that he played last year, you wanted to give him a shot this year. And basically the fact that you were basically pulling the plug at the first time that we saw, it's like, all right, the first possible chance where you had like a little window where it's like, should we pull him? It's like you pulled him. That tells me that Brent Venables and this coaching staff knows something that we don't here. And they know that Michael Hawkins is going to give them a better chance to win right now in the SEC than Jackson Arnold does. So I don't think that is a overreaction whatsoever. I'm going to choose to trust Brent Venables and this coaching staff and to believe that what they have been seeing in practices says that, hey, Michael Hawkins is just the better option right now. That doesn't mean Jackson Arnold is going to be a terrible quarterback somewhere else, or he maybe won't succeed at Oklahoma ever again. But I do think it was the right decision. Now, with that being said, though, Oklahoma fans, this is something that I talked about in the offseason where I was like, hey, I like what Venables has done with this roster. I like that he's added, more size, and the defense is in a way better shape than it ever was under Lincoln Riley. But this season, if you were just looking at this the rest of the season, I'll go ahead and show you guys Oklahoma's schedule for the rest of the season for the people that might not know, and just so we can all follow along at home. So if you're looking at their schedule for the rest of the season, they're 3-1 right now. They're favored by 2.5 at Auburn, which I'm telling you guys, Auburn is a team that is, is a talented team, hasn't necessarily been the best coach over the first 4 weeks, but they're a team that is not going to be a layup to beat Auburn at Auburn, even though they've been struggling. Texas, number 1 team in the country right now. I know the Red River Showdown is always a highly competitive game, but that's not going to be a cakewalk. South Carolina at home. Now you might think, hey, South Carolina, lower tier SEC school. If you guys keep having struggles on the offensive line, South Carolina's got one of the best defensive lines in the country. That could be a very, very interesting game for you guys there, but you guys still should be favored. At Ole Miss, you're not going to be favored in that game. Maine, I think you're going to be favored in that game. Then you finish the season with Missouri, Alabama at home, and then at LSU. Just looking at this schedule, if I'm just looking at this right now and we're doing the game of like how many games are they favored in? Auburn, South Carolina, and Maine would be the 3 that they're going to be favored in. That puts Oklahoma at a 6-6 record if you're just saying that they win every game they're favored and they lose every game that they're not. I think best case scenario for Oklahoma right now is 8-4. 8-4. Now, maybe it's more likely they're 7-5. They pull off an upset here or there. LSU doesn't necessarily look that sharp either to start this season. And I think Missouri is pretty gettable too. Even though I do think Missouri is a very good team, but they've kind of shown, they played Vanderbilt close, played BC close. They don't necessarily look at like any sort of juggernaut. This is the thing that we were talking about in the offseason. If you guys at Oklahoma, if you guys really believe in Brent Venables, don't freak out over this 8-4 season. Don't freak out over a 7-5 season or a 6-6 season. I know you guys are Oklahoma. You have a very high standard of yourself. But playing in the SEC with this super tough schedule that you guys have this year, combined with all the injuries and developing a young quarterback, it just might be kind of bumpy here for the next 2/3 of this season. It might be kind of bumpy. But if you believe in Brent Venables, Don't panic. Don't start firing coordinators. Don't do all of the classic things that other dumb SEC schools do. Don't do it. Don't fall into that trap, Oklahoma. Be smart. You're better than that. Now, Oklahoma's never been a reactionary team from the times I've watched them in the Big 12. Now, maybe they didn't have to be, but it is just going to be kind of interesting here to see, because I think this season, again, it doesn't mean that you guys don't have talent. It just means, hey, you caught the injury bug this year and you got a really tough schedule. So I do think this season could get kind of rocky pretty fast. And this Auburn-Oklahoma game that we have this weekend, this is a classic situation here where the loser of that game is going to go full panic button with their team. So going to be very, very interesting to see how Oklahoma does this weekend in that game and what is going to unfold for the rest of the season here for the Sooners. So that's going to do it for this episode here today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it already. Subscribing to the show is the best thing you can do to support the show, and it costs you absolutely $0. Feel free to leave a comment on what you thought about the show and what you think about Oklahoma and their season so far and this quarterback situation that they got going on. And feel free to check out other Sports Detective podcast channel shows, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for watching.